Welcome everybody back to a new video. In this video, I'm going to be only reading true crime books. I think I'm going to pick 3 and we will read them throughout like a week or however long. They should only take me like a week roughly to read because they're quite shorter books. I've read all of these books, but I haven't read them since I think like 2022, so I don't really remember them. So I thought this would be an interesting video and we can talk about all the things I find out. I'm a very big crime watcher. Like, I love documentaries about true crime. I love documentaries about serial killers. I love like Criminal Minds and Law and Order and Bones, like all those things. We have 5 options. Now, 2 of them are centered around specific things, and the other 3, I believe, are centered around multiple. The 10 Worst Serial Killers, monsters whose crimes shock the world. And immediately off the bat, I think I'll pick this one because it's centered around lots of different serial killers, and especially ones that are very well known. Yeah, I don't really remember this that well, so this is the first one I'll read, and I feel like this is the first one I will read in this video. Serial Killers, the true stories of the world's most murderers. And I'm not entirely sure if they overlap at all, but that could be still interesting because maybe this one has stuff about some people in this that they don't share because this is shorter, this book. So this one could be really interesting because, yeah, I think it's got some about women, I think. And you don't really hear too often about women serial killers. So I think this is the next one I will kill. Oh my god. Why did I say? I did not mean to say that. Will read. Some of these ones I remember less. Like some of the serial killers in this book I remember less than these ones. Like, obviously, and like vice versa. Like, I obviously know Ted Bundy and Charles Manson and stuff, but I don't really know that much about Charles Manson. And this one I know a lot more about, like the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer and stuff, but the next one I will read is Serial Killers, True Stories of the World's Worst Murderers. Now this one was, I think, one of the first ever true crime books I read, which this one is quite confronting because it is a child and he's from Queensland, I think. Yeah, Queensland. And I remember reading this going, holy heck, that is insane. This one's The Sting, the undercover operation that caught Daniel Malcolm's killer. But I think I'll read this one again only because I remember it being very interesting. It's obviously super confronting. So 3 books I'll be reading are The 10 Worst Serial Killers, and The Sting. Now, from memory, these were definitely my top 3. I remember really finding this one super interesting. They're all very short books. I'm going to start with The 10 Worst Serial Killers, and every time I read a chapter of the killer, I will be giving you an update. So I'm going to read this, and then when I've finished reading it, I will give you an update of my thoughts on this evil human being. I'm just coming on here to say that I don't actually end up talking about all of the killers in the books. I just decided to talk about the people I found the most interesting and say the most interesting things about them. Otherwise the video would have been like 4 hours long and no one wants to sit through me talking that long. So I just wanted to come on here and say it's just the things I find most interesting, but I would still recommend you reading them if you are interested in true crime. So the first person I read, I'm going to butcher his name, I apologize. His name was Luis Alfredo Garavito Cubelos, and he was known as the Beast. And he's from like Cuba or something like that. He was known as the worst serial killer in history, and he was found guilty of 138 murders between 1992 and 1999. And people, like, it is believed he may have as many as 400 people. And he favored little boys that like were fair skinned, blue eyes. So in October of 1980, he started to begin his first wave of crimes, and then over the course of the next 12 years he committed about 200 rape on children. Yeah, he favored boys aged between 8 and 13. ideally fair-skinned and blue-eyed, and he would lure them into the sugarcane fields. So the kids would go with him because they were from a small town in Colombia and they needed the money, and they would do whatever to get more money. This is so disgusting, but it says over the course of 8 years, he raped an average of 1 child a month. On average, that's not even just how many, it was on average. Became known as the Beast because in 1993 he started to do a new practice of killings where he would disembowel his victims while they were still alive, and then to end their pain, obviously because they're in pain, he would behead them, take out their vital organs, which I don't know where he put them, but they were never found, almost never found. And with this tactic or practice, or whatever you want to call it, he ended up doing that to 11 children in 1993. It just sounds like something from the earlier decades, you know what I mean? 1993 is really not that long ago when you really think about it. On 13th of December 1999, he was found guilty of 138 murders and sentenced to a total of 1,853 years and 9 days in prison. But he could be released any day now. So who knows if he will. I don't know if he's released, surely not. I'll have to do some research. He took inspiration for Hitler, so it makes sense why it's the fair skin, blue eyes, little boys, but very, very, very disturbing. So this one was about Eric Edgar Cooke, which was known as the Nightcaller. Now on Australia Day the next day, just after Australia Day, so 2 a.m. on 27th of January 1963, he shot a lot of people. But that is not where his criminal career, I guess, began. He was actually in jail a lot for little petty robberies and things like that, and he got out every time. And some of the things he got away with, I was baffled. I was like, oh my god, this man got away with so much. So in 1958, he selected 26-year-old Dutch immigrant Nels Schneider to be the first victim, first person he hurt. He stole a car and rammed it into the mother of two as she cycled down Hillview Terrace in the Bentley suburb of Perth. She was badly injured and she was left with severe epilepsy for the rest of her life. And the thing he did is, a lot of the cases of him either killing people or hurting them, he ran them over with a car a lot of the time. Not all the time, but a lot of the time he did do that. And then on Christmas, or just before Christmas one year, he committed another hit and run attack on a woman called Kathy Ballas while she was returning home from a late night shift. Yeah, she was left with a fractured skull and spine, broken pelvis, leg, kneecap, and multiple lacerations. And she survived, surprisingly. She did survive. And then the next year, so I believe it was 1959, he broke into a 33-year-old woman's home, and he stabbed her to death with a stolen diving knife. And you know how he got away with that murder? He told, the police, I'm assuming, because he was under suspicion for some reason. He told the police that the scratches on his face, because she was scratching him, obviously, the scratches on his face were because of his mentally disabled son. So he got away with it, and that was his first murder. He then murdered for the second time in December, and the victim was a 22-year-old Gillian Brewer. The confession from Cooke that he eventually gave, the judge didn't even believe, because the way this woman died was apparently so horrific. On the 9th of Feb, so this was after the Australia Day attacks, and I believe they were told to lock their doors and not leave at night time, and to walk in groups of people. So on the 9th of Feb, he ploughed a stolen car into a 17-year-old Rosemary Anderson because she was walking unescorted the streets of Perth because she had a fight with her boyfriend. Now this is where it gets seriously messed up. So he hit her with his car. Her boyfriend then, his name was John Budden, he then found her hit by a car on the road. The boyfriend ends up getting charged with her murder because he found her body and he was convicted of her manslaughter. Yeah, he served 5 years of a 10-year sentence and he was released in 2002. So this is him, a piece of dirt. The girl that got stabbed to death in her bed, I believe her boyfriend was also charged with her murder. He was in prison for 15 years, that man, and he ended up being in there for extra 24 years before his conviction was overturned. So not only did he get away with all these other murders, but he sent 2 innocent people to jail. It says in total he ended up confessing to 8 murders and 14 attempted murders, plus more than 250 burglaries. And then on 27th of November 1963, he was sentenced to death. And he was on death row in Fremantle Prison, and he would be the 154th and final man to hang at Fremantle Prison. Come on and give you my final update of the 10 Worst Serial Killers, because I did finish it last night. I ended up rating it a 3.5, which originally when I read it, I rated it a 4. I feel like it's just really difficult to rate non-fiction books. The first chapter that I read was about Robert William Pickton, who was the pig farmer killer, and he was seriously messed up. So he did work on a pig farm with his, I think it was like his brother or something, which his brother was kind of like his accomplice, but the pig farmer did pick up, I believe it was prostitutes, and that's who he was killing. But his first person he tried to kill was in 1997. I'm not sure, but her name was Wendy Lynn Eistetter, and she was handcuffed and stabbed and injured by this man, and she went to the police and they didn't end up believing her because she was a prostitute. So he kind of got away with that first one. It was on a pig farm, so if you've seen like Criminal Minds, that one episode of all the body parts found in like the pig area, like the shoes, you can kind of like imagine what like kind of happened. But basically a body was hanging from a hook, a meat hook, and they didn't treat her like a human and they treated her like a pig. I'll say that. But in the end, he ended up confessing to killing 49 women, and shockingly enough, nearly all of those bodies were never found. So you can kind of put 2 and 2 together and go, if they were never found, were they like given to pigs to be eaten? Or like, because how are you like hiding 49 bodies? And then on this 22nd Jan 2007, he confessed to killing 49 women, but he wanted to make it 50, so it was an even number. He was then charged with 27 counts of first-degree murder. To avoid lengthening the trial, because it was already really lengthy, the remaining 26 murders were split into 2, so Pickton was only charged with 6 counts. So I don't really know what that means, but it was split into 2. So on the 9th of December, they found him guilty on all 6 counts. Not of first-degree murder, but of second-degree, because they were convinced he didn't plan to kill them. He was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. And that was the longest sentence at that point in time available under the Canadian law. That was definitely the one I was like, this is like out of a horror movie. Like all of them, obviously, but that one, because of like the pig aspect, I was like, ugh, so disturbing. But the next one was about John Reginald Christie, who was the Rillington Strangler. So the first person he ended up killing was in 1944, and it was his 32-year-old co-worker. He instructed her to inhale a mixture of Friar's Balsam, a popular pungent cold cure, from a jar, and as she did that, he slipped behind her and connected a second tube in the jar, which led to the gas supply of his cooker. Within moments, Mira was unconscious from the carbon monoxide it contained. He then did things to her while strangling her, hence the Strangler name, and then he buried her in a backyard. He ended up marrying a woman after that war ended that year, and he was in and out of jail a lot, which is a common thing in these stories. A lot of them are in and out of jail a lot. Basically, the strangler ended up being hung in 1953. Yeah. And basically all you need to know about him is he would murder people, strangle them, and then he would put them underneath his floorboards, in his cupboards, bury them in the garden. He even did it to his own wife. And then he went on the run and rented his room, like, house out, and that's how he ended up being caught, because they found the bodies in the cupboard. So to me, I'm just like, did you want to get caught because you knew they were in there and you rented it out? But that's me thinking that personally. But that was about him, and I did find him, I feel like, one of the most interesting. Obviously the Zodiac Killer doesn't have a name, because at the time of writing this book they still hadn't found who this person was, and I'm still unsure if they have it now. They ended up stopping, like, shutting down the case because the kind of killings just stopped, so they assumed he was incarcerated or he was dead or injured or something, or he just stopped randomly. First killed in 1968. He ended up killing a 16-year-old and because he shot her in the head, and a 17-year-old boy also. So they were the first killings from the Zodiac Killer. Now, after each of his killings, he would send an encrypted message to the police department in the form of a letter, and it was a 408 symbol cryptogram that he said that it would reveal his identity, but it didn't actually, and someone ended up decoding this message, and it was basically saying he's going to continue to kill and you're never going to find him, blah blah blah. On the 13th of October, he actually ended up sending a letter to the police department. It said, "I think I shall wipe out a school bus some morning, just shoot out the front tire and then pick up all the kiddies as they came bouncing out." So from that moment, the police were very scared, obviously, and they put police escorts on each school bus. They advised the buses not to stop. They were following every single school bus and monitoring every single school. So he was wanting to torment them, and it soon was like, oh no, I think he's just scaring us, because nothing had happened. But then he actually threatened to bomb, I think, a school, which obviously didn't happen as well, thank God. So in 2004, the San Francisco Police Department closed the Zodiac Killer case. It was remained open in the California Justice Department, but they closed the case. And it was the first time in their history that they had closed an unsolved homicide case. And the Zodiac Killer left a final message saying, "The police shall never catch me because I have been too clever for them." Him, Ted Bundy, and Jeffrey Dahmer, the three most notorious serial killers in my mind. And I found that one interesting because, well, he's the only one in the book that's gotten away with it. Now, the final chapter in this book was about a man called Charles Sobhraj. I'm butchering all these names, but he was known as the Serpent. And this man traveled from Thailand to Nepal to India, and he kept going back and back and forth. He'd kill in one place, move to the next, kill there, move back, then kill there, and then move somewhere else. One of the reasons he ended up being caught was because he would target, like, Westerners who were traveling to these places like India, Thailand, Nepal. He would target them and say, "This pill will help you. You take this pill and it won't make you sick." But this pill actually did the opposite, obviously. And one of the reasons I believe that he got caught was because he ended up giving this pill to 60 students that were in India. It claimed it would protect them from dysentery, whatever that is, some illness. And it was meant to make them become sleepy after their meal, but it backfired drastically. And it actually ended up, because he misjudged the dosage, and it actually ended up making them dizzy, and that a lot of them collapsed before they even entered their hotel lobby. And so after that, the police were called, doctors were called, and they're like, well, this is odd, like, someone's clearly done this to them. He ended up being put on trial 5th of July 1977, and that was a year after he was originally arrested. And this was in India. He was on trial in India. He ended up being put in jail, but then on Sunday the 17th of March 1986, he threw a birthday party in this jail in India, and he ended up drugging the food and everything that he had smuggled into this prison, and he ended up escaping through with a getaway car through the crowded streets of the Indian capital. And this was after he'd been in jail for 10 years. And then he ended up having all his convictions overturned in the higher courts in India, but the only problem was that he could be extradited to Thailand because he had prior crimes in Thailand. He also had prior crimes in the other countries he was in, but the main one he was concerned about was Thailand because he didn't want to be extradited there because obviously the prisons are a lot harsher than they were in the previous one he was in India. And he could be possibly facing firing squad if he went to Thailand jail. But after he escaped, he ended up being captured again. He was sentenced to a further 10 years in jail for the escape. But that meant that when he was finally released from that jail in 1997, he wouldn't be able to be tried for the murders in Thailand because the statute of limitation or whatever would have passed by then. But then he was deported back to France, which is where he's from. But on the 20th of August 2004, he was actually found guilty of a woman's murder and sentenced to life in prison. And then in September 2014, he was convicted of murdering another woman and handed a second life sentence because he was charged with these murders because there's no statute of limitation in Nepal. So he was charged with them once they arrested him again. So the cases in Thailand were, I guess, dismissed because they couldn't charge him anymore because the time had lapsed. But they could charge him in Nepal because there was no statute of limitation. He was like interesting because, like I said, he was moving from Thailand to India to Nepal, and he just kept going back and back and back and forth. He changed his name at one point, I think, to Daniel. He did have like an accomplice, so I don't know if they were charged or anything, but he had like a helper. So that is the 10 worst serial killers completed, and like I said, I rated 3.5. Was a reread. I think I originally did rate a 4. Now the next one I'm starting is Serial Killers by El Camino, which is true stories of the world's worst murderers. But I have read a chapter already, and that one was about Charles Manson, which I feel like is a very well known murderer. But he is, I would say, very different to the rest of them because he didn't actually kill these people. Charles Manson, he's now dead. He died in a California state prison in 2017, so that just shows how recent. That was really not that long ago. He served 47 years for murder and conspiracy to murder, but he didn't actually murder any of these people himself. So he created like a cult following, I guess, where these people were living under him, like living with him, and they followed all his rules. He was like God to them. But the case was in 1969 because on his orders, 8 people were hacked to death in a meaningless orgy of violence that left America and the rest of the world reeling. He had, I think, a few women living with him and a male, and he wrote a song. So the first killing that he made these people do, he wrote a song. It was a terrible song. He couldn't sing. I think it was like a repeat of like 2 words over and over and over and over again. And he went to a producer and was like, I want this song. I want you to make me famous from this song. I want it to go viral, basically. And the person's like, I'm not going to do that. And he ended up being killed. His followers ended up getting sent to prison. And I believe it was one of the young women ended up telling the police that yes, she killed them, they killed them, whatever. But it was under the orders of Charles Manson. So on the October 15th, 1969, he was arrested and charged. And the reason he wasn't like executed or sent or given the death penalty was because it was abolished in California by 1972. So that's why he got life in prison instead. He was so manipulative and had this following, and he was like a cult leader. He literally wore like that symbol on his head, and he had this following, and not even to mention after they killed these people, they ended up going home and having intercourse all as one. That hence why it's like an orgy of killing. So I did find him interesting because of that. And I've never really read about serial killers not actually done the killing, but you know that they're responsible. Do you know what I'm saying? This one is about Mikhail Popkov, who is the werewolf serial killer. He was Russia's most prolific serial killer, even most prolific killer in general. He admitted to raping and murdering more than 80 women. And the final total could have been even higher than that. No one ever knows. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for 22 murders in 2015, but he claimed he stopped killing in 2000 after one of his victims gave him syphilis, rendering him impotent. In 2017, he admitted that he continued for another 10 years and confessed to killing another 60 people in central Siberia, and there may have been even more victims. And what was so interesting about this guy as well, he was a police officer, so he was picking up a lot of his victims in a police car, and that scares me, honestly, because that could happen so easily and you just wouldn't even know, because you're trusting these people you're meant to trust. This one's about John Wayne Gacy, who was known as the Killer Clown, which I feel like he's a very well-known one too. I feel like I watched a documentary or an episode or something surrounding him, and yeah, he dressed up as a clown, as if clowns weren't creepy enough as is. Yeah, he dressed up as a clown, and he was a kitty fiddler. He ended up pleading not guilty for reason of insanity. Like, why wouldn't majority of them do that if they think they can get away with it? He was found guilty of 33 charges of murder, along with SA and indecent liberties with a child in the case of a boy called Robert. He was sentenced to death. He was also gay, and I believe his wife ended up leaving him at one point because of that, and he just became very fascinated with males and little males. And on May 9th, 1994, he was executed by lethal injection. I'll give you an update probably tomorrow afternoon or morning when I read some more chapters. Hopefully they don't get seriously messed up, because it's already bad enough. So I finished this book, and now I'm going to give you, I've put down pages for certain people, and I'll just tell you the interesting stuff. I'm going to tell Birdie. This one.
I like these ones. I like when you tell me that.
This one is Tommy Lynn Sells, who was a coast-to-coast killer. It was in 1998, and he travelled to Texas with the Heart of America Carnival. He was with the carnival. Oh. He broke into a trailer of his family. He killed, I think it was all, like, everyone in this family, like parents and like 2 or 3 kids. But one of the girls, he slit her throat, right? He slit her throat. She pretended to be dead. Yeah, and then she ran to the neighbours and was like, she couldn't speak. And she wrote, it was like, am I going to die? Yeah. And she lived. She was at his trial with a scar on her neck.
I've heard that.
How fucked is that?
Yeah, that's fucked.
Karl Denk, the cannibal of Zybek. I don't know. This guy had accused him of attacking him with an axe, and they didn't believe him. And then a doctor examined this guy's head and found a wound that was inflicted by a heavy cutting tool. And when they went to this man's house, they found bones and pieces of meat pickled in brine in a large barrel. And revealed hairy skin, a severed torso, and large parts of a pair of buttocks. It was clear that the bodies had been cut up after the victim was dead, but their head, arms, legs, and sexual organs were missing, along with slices from the buttocks. A medical examiner assumed they had either been eaten or sold as meat.
That's so disgusting.
The Mad Butcher of Kingsbury, Kingsbury Run, the Cleveland torso murderer. This person's never been found. They don't know who did it.
Sure.
The Cleveland torso murderer was neither caught nor identified. He was active during the 1930s. Yeah, a man did go to jail for it. Because he did confess. He was found dead in his cell, but they still don't think it was him.
Interesting.
Irina, yeah, whatever.
Oh, this is the nurse.
No. Satin in a skirt.
Huh?
Creepy.
Satan?
Saturn.
Was it Saturn or Satan?
Satan.
Wait, was it 2 A's or an I?
Satan.
Oh, it was Satan, yeah.
Her murder spree began in 2002, and her victims were between 61 and 89.
In age?
And she was so brutal, the way she killed, that they thought it was a male. They thought it couldn't have been a woman. Because one of the people she killed, she staved a victim's head in with 24 blows. Hit over the head. But at the time, she was not the only granny killer.
Oh, nice.
Beverly Allett, the Angel of Death, this is the doctor, made her patients more sick. One of them, I swear, was like, came in with like cerebral palsy. It had cerebral palsy. I don't know, she made them all sick, and she did it for a few weeks. It was only a few weeks at least. And then she got caught.
Oh, right.
Yeah, one of the freaking mums came in with 2 kids. I think one had cerebral palsy and one didn't. And then one of them died. And then the other one got sick. Really sick overnight. And she like was put in a coma or whatever. And then, yeah, the lady made her her godmother. Because she's like, you saved my daughter, basically.
But she'd already killed the other one.
She'd killed heaps of kids.
But she'd killed her other daughter.
Yeah. She's like drugging them, I think. Oh yeah, and putting like insulin and like all this shit in them. She admitted 3 of the murders and 6 of the attempted murders. Her earliest possible parole date is 2032. That's not even that far away. That was this. I rated this 3.75 because I didn't find it all interesting, but I found some.
You read this already, haven't you?
I read all of these.
Oh, you already read that one.
Yeah. Which is about Daniel Morecombe, who was 13 years
Oh, the
old.
bus one.
7th of December 2003. And he vanished from a bus stop on Queensland Sunshine Coast. The police setting a trap to catch the killer.
I should read that.
That's what I'm reading. So this morning I started The Sting, which is the story of Daniel Morecombe when he went missing when he was 13 years old on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. And it's about uncovering who the killer was, and you very quickly find out who the person is because the whole book's pretty much about him and how it got to that point. On Sunday, the 7th of December 2003, Daniel Morecombe, 13-year-old, vanished from a bus stop on Queensland's Sunshine Coast. 8 years later, on 13th of August 2011, it resulted in the arrest of pedophile Brett Cohen for abduction and murder. So a long time later. Cohen was eventually sentenced on March 14th, 2014 to life in jail with a non-parole period of 20 years. This is a story of how the police set a trap to catch a child killer. So that day that he went missing, he decided he wanted to go to the Sunshine Plaza, which was only a short bus trip, and he has a twin brother and an older brother, and they would all often go on the bus alone or together, so he knew he was confident and capable, and his parents were letting him do that as well. He asked his twin to go with him, Bradley, and also his brother Dean, but neither of them wanted to go, and unfortunately that's the last time they ever saw or spoke to their brother. So he was at this bus stop, and the reason that he didn't actually end up getting on the bus was because the bus was meant to arrive at a certain time. I think it was like 1:30 in the afternoon, but it broke down, so another bus was coming, but it would be later. And when the bus passed, he's like, wow, I've just missed my bus, and he didn't see the other one coming because at that point he had already gone with this man. A common denominator in this when they were asking for witnesses was that one thing they could agree on was there was a man standing behind him at a bus stop, and that is the one thing that was agreed upon by every single person that saw him. He was in a red shirt, blue shorts, and there was a man behind him. And then it became clear that also there was a blue car nearby that many people saw, and many people also saw a man and a young boy in this car. They were the things that everyone knew for certain, and they were the most common things that everyone said. He didn't arrive home that night. His parents immediately knew something was wrong because he was a very responsible child. He always followed through with his plans, and he wouldn't have not come home unless something happened to him. So they immediately went out and looked for him, and then they couldn't find him, so that's when they went to the police. So then you get into the story about this well-known pedophile, may I add. He's well-known. He was in jail many times for pedophilia, for a lot of different things, and this is one of his first incidences that people know of, and it was when he was an 18-year-old. He was ordered to complete maintenance work at the childcare centre, which was all courted community service, because previously he had done something, I think it was raped someone, but like, why would the community service be at a childcare centre? That doesn't make sense to me, and that makes me really uncomfortable. He took one of the kids from there, offered them like a toy. That's how he got them to go with him, and this is when he raped this little boy in the toilet at this centre, and a lot of different horrific sex acts. He did eventually end up telling his mum, and he was arrested, thank God. And for that he was sentenced to 2 years in jail, but he only served half, which does frustrate me. Another incident, he was sentenced to jail for 7 years with a non-parole period of 3.5 because he was living at a trailer park with his girlfriend at the time, and he ended up going missing, and the girlfriend was very confused, didn't know where he went, until they saw a little boy who'd also gone missing, who was bloody, beaten and naked, and he was under 10, really young. Extreme injuries, for example, bruises on his forehead, his hairline, abrasions around his mouth and over his lips, across his cheek, hemorrhaging in his left eye, bruises and abrasions on the legs, arms and the front of the trunk, really deep injuries to the left leg, left scalp, and he had a blood clot in his skull. And he also had a collapsed and punctured left lung, a deep cut to the back of the head, and he had lacerations to the left leg below the knee, a deep cut at the base of his scrotum, bloody nose, blackened eyes, scratch marks over his torso. So this pedophile had literally done absolutely the worst to this little boy, and he was caught after this, and that's when he went to jail for 7 years, non-parole period of 3.5. And may I add that the woman found out that he was with, the woman found out about it, stayed with him. Well, they broke up, but then he discovered God, of course, and then they got married, and then they had a kid in 2002, but he started to become aggressive with her, and he didn't really treat the son like his at all. He didn't care about the kid. And that's when Daniel Morcombe went missing. She was like, I feel funny in my stomach about this, in my heart. I know he has something to do with this somehow. And that is when the police knocked on her door. I found this interesting. It says that 1 week after Daniel disappeared, police set up a mannequin dressed in the same clothing that the teenager had worn that day, and police placed it under the overpass that he was last at. They did this so they could pull over people and ask them if they'd seen this mannequin, so this kid, and see if anyone had driven through there at the time or whatnot. And in all, 84 people gave eyewitness accounts of seeing Daniel, a person of interest or a vehicle of interest. And by 2008, more than 18,000 job logs had been filed by police, thousands and thousands of leads. The state government reward of $250,000 had gotten a $750,000 boost thanks to private owners, but a year later it would expire and there would still be no answers. So even by the end of 2008 or 2009, there was still no answers. So unfortunately, the donations for that money to help bring someone to justice just, unfortunately wasn't met. But I'm reading this and it's making me sad, it's making me angry, and it is just like something like you can't even comprehend even happening, or like you can't even comprehend the type of evil that do these things. And then when I'm like telling Bodhi, he's like, I just feel uncomfortable, it's disgusting. And like, it is disgusting to us, but like people don't think it is. Some people don't think it is, and that I will never be able to understand that. I really won't. So I just finished The Sting by Kate. Don't even know how to say that, I'll give it a try. But thought I'd come on here while the thoughts are fresh in my mind and give you my final thoughts for this book. I ended up rating it a 4.5, which I had originally given it a 5 when I had read it years ago. I don't really know what the 0.5 is missing, but out of the three books I read, this was definitely my favorite, and I felt a stronger connection to this book. What I was up to, they started talking about Mr. Big, which Mr. Big is like a group which they talk about a lot in this book, which is pretty much the entire second half of the book is about this Mr. Big. Now, it started in like Canada, where they would put like undercover cops in like social situations, like gang situations, where they would put this person and make them do these jobs so they could like them form connections with like a person they were trying to get information on, and then this person would often end up telling them about something that they had done. So that's what they had done with this Cohen guy, to discover if he would form a connection with these people and if he would tell them what he'd done to Daniel Morecambe, because they were nearly positive that they had their guy and that it was him. So they put multiple undercover cops together and created a group where they said they were doing, like, they would send Cohen to do all these tasks. He would then get paid, he'd form connections with these people, and then so he'd then trust them. And specifically one of the guys, Franklin, he really trusted him and he thought they were best friends, really, and he ended up spilling literally everything to this guy. So he ended up telling this man everything. So what they did was they said, the boss isn't happy with you, because it was in this gang group. So the boss isn't happy with you, you need to come forward. We found out that you might have a connection to this missing kid, Daniel Morecambe. Now, if you do have a connection, just be honest. We're not going to get angry at you, we're not going to judge, we're not going to do anything. We'll support you, we'll get rid of the issue. So they were gaslighting, basically. Well, they were. And he ended up spilling absolutely everything because he thought that they were his friends and he thought that he could get out of this problem. He said that he offered Daniel Morecambe a lift at the bus stop when the bus didn't show, and he just was straight up like, would you like a lift to Sunshine Plaza? And Daniel was like, yeah, I would love that, thanks. Gets in the car. And they were driving for half an hour, which he said it was only like a 10-minute trip to the plaza, but they were driving for half an hour because this evil guy said he had to go home and tell his wife what he was doing, so she wasn't like worried. So then they drove to this place that was his home, which was half an hour away. So it was this abandoned house on this macadamia farm. He said he was taking him there to only sexually touch this boy and do things to him that were disgusting to read about, let alone think about. And the kid ended up panicking, as he should have been, And he ended up panicking, he ended up strangling him, and that he was instantly dead. And what makes me start with anger, I'm like, you must have had incredible force to be able to just kill him that quickly. And secondly, he was dead before his parents even knew he was missing. So that was really hard to read. He threw Daniel down an embankment near this home, and he stripped him naked, left him there out in the open under this tree, and left him there. He didn't even bury him. So then he came back 7 days later, or 7 or 8 days later, and there was nothing left of him because he'd been ravaged by wild animals. But the only thing left of him was one minuscule piece of bone, and he buried it. So once this whole Mr. Big scenario thing had gone on, they end up returning to the macadamia farm, and because this Franklin guy said he needed one more thing from this Cohen guy, and all the police were there, and they arrested him. And then after that, they started the search for his clothing, the bone of him, or any bones. It was on Wednesday the 7th of August that they ended up finding his globe shoes that he was wearing the day he went missing and died, and also 17 bones were found. So that was kind of a break for the parents, because then they could actually have a funeral for their son and bury him, or whatever they wanted to do with him. They could actually do it now because they actually had him back home with them after, this was in 2011, so he went missing in 2003. And then on the 7th of December 2012, they held Daniel's funeral, and I think like everyone went, like lots of police, the former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, hundreds and hundreds of people went. Brett Peter Cohen was convicted by the jury on 1 count of murder, 1 count of indecent treatment of a child under 16, and 1 count of interfering with a corpse. And by what I read, the judge was disgusted by him, as she should be, but she even said that he was given a life sentence and he would be eligible for parole in 20, but she had said on the record, like, for future parole board or whatever, that if you let him out, like, there's no redemption for this man. Like, he can't be rehabilitated, he can't be fixed, like, he is pure evil. And apparently that really helped, like, that was a good thing she did by, like, saying that, because it means, like, he might never be able to get out. But that was this book, and those were the 3 books I'm reading for this video. It was a very different video. I don't know if I'll be doing it again anytime soon, that's for sure. And I apologize if it was very confronting, some of the things I said. Thank you for watching my video. I would say I hope you enjoyed, but you probably didn't, because I didn't either, really. But I hope that it was something that you were intrigued about listening to, at least. I hope you liked listening to me talk about seriously messed up things. Okay, bye. See you in my next video.